Here.
Chair Claudia Bogan.
Here. First on the agenda, under subdivision approval not required plans, 11-13 Richmond Avenue, Paul and Cynthia Spinazzola and David and Amy Chamberlain.
Yes, Madam Chairman and members of the board, we have an A&R in front of you this evening for, as you just said, property on Richmond Avenue. It's 2 lots, and the property lines are being reconfigured between the two to create a third buildable lot at the end bend of the road. The plan also incorporates into the parcels some land that formerly had some questions about ownership, and those have been clarified through, I believe, the land court, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Salvati?
That is correct.
And so this plan will incorporate that decision into the record. So all of the lots that are shown on the plan meet the minimum frontage requirement for the zoning district, so I'm recommending that you endorse it as an A&R.
All right, does any member have any questions or comments on the plan? Dave?
There was a question of a shed. Is that this one?
Oh, yes. Thank you for reminding me of that. I'm sorry, let me pull the plan out so I have it in front of me. There is in fact a shed that is shown too close to the side lot line if the subdivision goes through. So I would recommend 2 things. We can either ask the applicant, I think it is standing at the moment, so if the board endorses this as an A&R, you can only look at the question of frontage, and it does meet the requirement for endorsement, but your letter memorializing your vote to endorse should include a notation that there is an existing shed on the property that may or may not have a zoning violation as a result of the plan. Sort of an acknowledgement of it.
Okay, or anyone else?
Yes,
Yep,
Madam
Mike.
Chair. To Tina through the chair. There's the standard note that says the above endorsement, if we do go with this endorsement as an A&R, this is the standard note that endorsement is not a determination that the planning board is to conform, with zoning requirements. So that will cover us, right?
It would. I'd say putting it in your letter would be belt and suspenders.
Okay, that's a good idea. We should.
But you're
keep
right.
that.
There is a note always required as well.
If I may?
I see the council rising.
Hold on, Mike, are you set?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, yes.
Just to clarify further, I think the shed is on a lot that you're not creating, so to speak. The lot is on the remaining, the shed is on the remaining lot. There's a piece going from one to another, and we're taking the shed is actually going to be better for zoning because we're adding a piece in the back that makes it on his lot. But I just wanted to clarify that, although it might be causing a zoning violation to move the lot line closer to this shed, again, that's just something we'd have to take up with the building department.
That's what I was referring to. The adjustment of that side lot line brings the lot line closer to
Closer.
the shed than it was before.
Correct. But we will deal with it through the
Okay.
building department.
Thank you, Attorney
Thank you.
Salvati. All right, are there any other questions or comments? All right, hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
All right, a motion by Dave to adopt the planning board director's recommendation and approve with the letter. Yes, that's the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Bob. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I would ask for a vote. All in favor, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in favor, none opposed. That motion carries. Thank you. All right, under public hearings, continued public hearing on 43 Pool Street definitive subdivision plan.
Good evening, Madam Chairwoman. For the record, Attorney James Giuliano on behalf of 43 Pool Street, Scafidi Giuliano, 42 Pleasant Street in Woburn. This is a continuance of the redevelopment at 43 Pool Street. As you know, my client is proposing to keep the existing structure that is located at 43 Pool Street and create 4 total lots, but 3 new lots in the back of 43 Pool Street. So I'm going to try to manipulate this in order, if I can.
All right.
Just scroll.
Yeah, I'm just going to...
I think what I'm going to do is just
so
move
this
on over next to Kevin, so that way I can see it, and
Yeah, I'm going to try to go in order with the sheets and kind of go through existing conditions and then proposed conditions, then utilities, just to make it easy to follow, but. So as you can see from the existing conditions plan, we are proposing to develop the rear yard of 43 Pool Street, which, as you can see, the existing structure is to the west. I don't know if this is going to help, but the existing house is located here where the cursor is. That is a cape that was owned by Ollie and Dorothy Galante. Dorothy recently passed, but that structure is going to stay. And Lot 4 will be created with the structure that will be 12,000 square feet. So the back area, in total, is just about 2 acres if you include the 43 Pool Street property. And again, this area right here, we're proposing to create 3 new lots, all which will be conforming. So again, the 43 Pool Street property will have frontage on Pool Street, and the 3 new lots will have frontage on what we're proposing to have, if you look at the comments, Winter Road Extension or Winter Road, which we plan to have a discussion on that, but that will all have frontage on that. We will create a roadway with a cul-de-sac that we'll describe in a little bit, the particulars of that. The existing 20-foot easement that exists, which also has frontage on Pool Street, which I'm going to scroll, is located right here. So if you remember correctly, if anybody's been out to the property is kind of quirky. It almost does like a U shape, a reverse U. So the property has frontage around Pool Street here for the property, for the existing single-family home. It wraps around where the cursor is, and then it also has an outlet and frontage of about 50 or more feet on this end of Pool Street. So as of right now, there's an existing sewer easement that is laid on that area of the property. There's also, if you remember, a walking path that is fenced in. So our proposal, which at the first hearing and continues to be our proposal here, is to donate or give that to the city in some fashion. It is not necessary for the subdivision. It's not necessary that our client uses that, other than obviously the sewer itself. So we can have discussions based on that and what the board is looking for. Obviously, there's some comments on that as well, so we can get into that a little bit more. There's also an intermittent stream that follows that sewer easement. We are in front of the Conservation Commission currently. They do not have any issues. We filed a notice of intent, and we're expected to get an order of conditions shortly based on that. But there basically are going to be no removal of vegetation in the buffer zone. It is an intermittent stream, which calls for bordering vegetative wetlands, which gives the Conservation Commission jurisdiction of 150 feet. Test pits are shown on this plan. With me tonight is the engineer, Freddie Russell, who can elaborate a little bit more, answer questions on the test pits and the drainage. But they are shown on this existing conditions plan. And also the trees that are to be removed in connection with the subdivision are also crossed out on this plan as well. So that's the existing conditions as they stand today. Yeah, look, okay, so that's pretty good. So this is the proposed conditions plan. As you can see, the creation of the 3 lots are formed on the sheet. So lot 1, which if you go bottom right, start and then counterclockwise, is lot 1, 2, 3, and 4. Lot 1 will contain a little bit over 13,000 square feet. The garage that does exist on the property, I think we mentioned this before, but it will be removed. That was and currently was used as just a painter's shack, but that'll all be removed. Lot 2, which is contiguous to Lot 1 on the left side, will contain 16,156 square feet. It will hold one of the 2 infiltration systems for the roadway runoff. And then Lot 3, which will contain 12,912 square feet, will hold the second infiltration system. And again, the existing shed that is on that proposed Lot 3 will be removed as well. Lot 4, as you know, will be the existing property that will be carved out and will be conforming. So all of those parcels will be conforming to current zoning ordinances. Now, the parcel B that we carved out, which is something we wanted to mention and note, this is property that did belong to Lot 2 when we first submitted the initial plans a couple weeks back. This is property that we are willing to donate in some fashion to the city. This does hold a 20-foot easement that the city has for sewer, and it also has a walkway. Basically, kids and adults, whatnot, they go from Pool Street and they basically use it to get to the Alta Vista School, and that's what it's used for. So we're not trying to get rid of that use. We encourage it. We're going to keep everything the way it is. It's just a matter of in what shape or fashion we keep it its integrity. So that was proposed. It is proposed to donate to the city. And that does hold the wetland area as well. So again, we're not proposing to do anything, but we are proposing to donate that parcel B. So I wanted to clearly show that. Sheet 4 gets into the roadway construction. This is where the details show, sheets 4 and 5. So from the roadway and utilities plans, we can see that this is an extension of Winter Road. Basically, as you are familiar with Winter Road, it sort of goes easterly, so it goes easterly from Pool Street, easterly down Winter Road, and then it also veers off, and we're proposing to extend this area of Winter Road. And again, there was some comments through fire and police about the name, and again, I don't think it's pertinent what we call it, but I think it's important that the board and the city are happy with the results. I think it's important for safety and knowing where people are going. So we can discuss that. The sidewalks, we are continuing the sidewalks along the existing Winter Road. Winter Road, if you don't know, has sidewalks on the southerly side of Winter Road and then stops basically right where my cursor is. So it stops right about here. We're proposing to continue that sidewalk up through the cul-de-sac and then stop right pretty much in the middle of Lot 2. So obviously a waiver would be sought. We will have granite curbing that will house the bituminous sidewalk. The roadway will be widened to 24 feet. As of right now, it's less than that, but we will be widening it to 24 feet. There are several catch basins that are located on this plan that will obviously catch the roadway runoff, go into the infiltration systems, which I'll have Mr. Russell explain a little bit more on lots 2 and 3. A hydrant is added at the top in front of lot 2, I believe, obviously for fire suppressant and water. So we're going to get into that a little bit more as well. Utilities will be all underground, running from Winter Road up through the Winter Road, which I will call extension into the cul-de-sac, so everything will be underground. Street plantings will be obviously planted in accordance with the subdivision rules and regulations, and a street light is also going to be proposed at the end of the cul-de-sac right in front of Lot 2. So these are all listed on these plans 4 and 5, I believe. Now, when you get into the list of waivers, which, again, I was talking to Ms. Cassidy, we will put a very detailed list of the waivers, but it is good to discuss them first. We have a few waivers, obviously, as you can see from the plans and the comments, that we are going to be seeking. The first one is where the 50 feet width required for a roadway is required. We are proposing 40 feet. If you don't know, the plan that laid this street out in 1958 only lays out 40 feet. So we are going to lay that out to its maximum extent possible. It's impossible based on what was laid out in 1958 in the original subdivision plan to go any wider than that. The roadway of 26 feet that's required under the subdivision rules is now going to be lessened to 24 feet. The cul-de-sac diameter of 110 that is required is going to be 100 feet, which gets us from the required diameter of 86 feet down to 80 feet. The drain lines, which this is a common waiver, I think the drain lines to be reinforced with concrete will be ADS or advanced drain systems, the common, non-corroding drains that are, used in current construction now. And then the sidewalks and roadways, again, we mentioned that the sidewalk will go on the southwesterly portion of the roadway and stop. It's not going to go through the whole street, so we would need a waiver. And we are proposing bituminous, not concrete, that is proposed. So those are the list of waivers. The big item that came up, obviously, if you didn't notice from the comments that came out through several departments, is parcel B, how it is to be given to the city and what its use is to be, and then the water looping, okay? We would make a compelling argument that its existing condition does not loop the water at Winter Road. Right now, it just stays, it's stagnant. We're proposing to better the situation by putting a hydrant at the end of it, which will allow us to flush all of that water out that's not being done today. In lieu of that, to loop the water, we would be required to go out to Pool Street. Now, Lot 1 and 2, I believe, have a little bit of rock, so to do that would be intrusive, it would be unnecessary, and we're trying to limit the scope of our impact to this area right here, not only for the developer, but also for the neighbors as well. So we're trying to avoid that. I think it's unnecessary. We are in further talks with engineering and DPW, but I would, again, make a compelling argument to the board that it's not necessary. We're bettering the condition of the water by not looping it. So we would argue that, that should be maintained as proposed today. The sewer, again, we're going to use the sewer easement to loop our sewer into it, but again, we would be more than compelling to give it to the city, if not an easement, an indefeasible easement to the city, in any which manner they want. So obviously, again, we're just trying to show the board, trying to show the community that we're not using it for roadway, we're not using it for any access points, we're not trying to worsen the situation for the neighbors. We've had a few conversations and meetings with the neighbor, with the alderman, and I think we have a good plan right now that effectuates what we're looking to do and makes the neighborhood happy to the maximum extent. So based on that, I will certainly answer any questions. Again, Mr. Russell's here as well to answer any detailed engineering questions.
All right, Council, thank you for your presentation. First, I'd like to open it up to the board. Having listened to Council's presentations, does anyone have any questions or comments straight off the bat? Okay, hearing none, this is a continued public hearing. That means that anyone here who has a question, comment, is speaking either in favor or in opposition to the proposal can come up, state your name and address for the record, and give your comments to the board. So I'd like to open it up to the public at this time for that input. Hi and
Hi.
welcome.
My name is Jen Paquin. My maiden name is Galanti. I'm currently living in Manchester, New Hampshire. My grandparents, Ollie and Dottie, built their home at 43 Pool Street many years ago. My dad was raised there and grew up playing with his neighborhood friends on that land. Then he built his home at 15 Winter Road, where my sister and I grew up. That field is where we learned to ride our bikes, play sports, skated on our own ice rink, and where we celebrated family birthdays. I even had my first job there mowing the field. I learned so much about life in those years watching my grandparents and my dad work on their homes and on that land. I know a development like this is a lot of work and a lot of time. So my family and I want to thank this committee, the city, and all of those who have worked hard on this. While it is difficult for my family and I to embrace this change, we know it's time for other families to grow up there and make their own memories on that land. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, is there anyone else who would like to come up and make a comment or ask a question?
Thank you.
Hi, Lou DeMambro, 210 School Street, City Council, Ward 6.
Welcome.
My only concern with this project is I would like to keep it as non-invasive as possible when they're running the water lines, the sewer lines, and everything else. The amount of any rock or ledge that might be up there kind of scares me with the loop system that DPW has suggested. And I'm not trying to go in anybody else's wheelhouse. I'm just saying, being the residents that are up there, all up in North Woburn, and being the project that happened at the ledges, blasting and jackhammers with hydrohammers is an absolute problem up there. So if we can do this project with the most limited amount, non-invasive process as possible, I would strongly suggest and recommend that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, is there anyone else who would like to come up and speak at this time? All right, I don't see anyone. So at this point, is there any comments or questions from the board, or should Tina, you start going through our list of potential questions and comments? Mike?
I have a couple of questions and kind of comments, and this plan's come a long way since, about a month or so back, and you've gone definitely in the right direction and done all the right things. The only thing that sticks out to me, I mean, I like this, and I see a path forward. It's probably nitpicking is the asphalt sidewalk. I just, granted, it's only servicing the couple of new homes there, but they just don't last. Even though you get the granite curbing.
Yep.
Just kind of, I don't know if other board members feel the same way, but it's just a bit of a pet peeve with me. It's, people like to walk on the sidewalks. After 10 or 20 years of walking on an asphalt sidewalk, it's, the roots take control and versus cement, it's just my feeling. And I believe the waiver is going to be required because it's not both sides. I don't have a problem with the way it is presented. Only because it's only servicing those few homes. That's just my,
No, that's
speaking.
fair comment, thank you. Which, if I may interject too, Tina, just thinking of another waiver too, I know it's in the rules and regulations, but I know it's been common practice with the new subdivisions to not do a landscaping strip between the sidewalk and the curbing. So I guess we're just proposing right up to the
Well, actually, I think the plan that you have shows a 3 or 3.5 foot grass strip meeting our requirements.
Does it
And
show?
then a
Okay.
5-foot sidewalk where we typically require 4.
Okay, I didn't see that. Okay, so that's fine then, okay.
And then we usually have 3 feet of
Price.
loam and seed behind the sidewalk, between the edge of the sidewalk and the property line. But
That's fine, we can keep it, because
there
I only
is
know the newer
something-
ones.
There is something to be said, though, and it's worthy of discussion, that when you get a grass strip that is 3 or 3.5 feet wide, it is sometimes difficult to keep it looking nice. It's hard to maintain. So it's up to the board. I guess there have been occasions in the city where the sidewalk has been placed flush with the curb so that there is no grass strip at all, but I think that's what he was just alluding to as an alternative.
Yeah, I know the last 2 or 3 subdivisions, DPW and engineering suggested not doing that because the feeling was that, no one was going to take care of it, where it's, not theirs, it's the city's. And so I know my street being one of them, it's just, a sidewalk right up to the curbing. So, but, we were trying to just kind of make it a little bit nicer. But again, Mr. Ventresca's comment, the existing sidewalk on Winter Road is bituminous now, so we're just kind of keeping it the way it is, but we can look at that for sure.
Thank you.
Mike, are you good?
One last, while
Please
my
do.
train of thought is there, is I recall, it wasn't that long ago, was the Postal Service was requesting us to
Yeah.
create a mail, and I thought it was only for condo developments, but it was for all subdivisions. They want us to, instead of having individual mailboxes, and And I'm thinking, because that would be, you know, you want the grass strip to put a mailbox out front.
Yeah.
The postal carrier can buy, put the mail in that. But there was I don't know if it was some sort of directive we got from the.
It's collective mailboxes under a doghouse, so to speak. So they're all, like you're saying, all three of them would be in one centrally
Yeah,
located
yeah.
area.
And
Yeah.
like, I don't know where we ended up with that. You know,
That's a good catch, though,
I
Mike.
just, I mean, I don't care one way or the other, really, don't. But I don't want to get, you know, reprimanded. We almost had it was something weird.
We had a situation where we had a single-family subdivision that had been approved years before, and the post office refused to deliver any mail because they had
Yeah,
individual
that's what it
mailboxes.
was.
And so they had to try to go backward in time. The suggestion was that they needed to find some land on which they could put like a community mailbox. And they insisted that that was the only way they were gonna deliver mail to that subdivision. Now, I don't know if they ended up relenting on that one because it was so difficult. The land had already been sold off to different property owners by the time we caught up with the directive. So, long story short, I need to go back and check my notes. I think we need to notify them when there's a new subdivision they've asked, because it's better to find out now for you to carve out land
Yep.
before you sell to another party and then find out you don't have mail delivery and you have to go to the post
Absolutely.
office for it.
Not to go on a tangent, the last more recent subdivision I can remember are Watson and Tufts, which were about 6 or 7 years ago, and they all have individual mailboxes.
You know, I prefer that, I mean, just for aesthetic,
We can discuss, we can find out.
just something that just came to my,
Well, no, that's a good catch, because
is.
I don't recall whether we've approved a single-family home subdivision in the last little while, and I
Really only one
believe-
lot.
Yeah, I believe that the mail situation showed up relatively recently. I mean, I'm guessing, 2019-ish, maybe not pandemic time, but
I think it was up
I think
in,
you're right.
right before it. And so now, I'd hate for you guys to be the guinea pig for the U.S.
Yeah.
Postal Service on that.
Well, I had this issue in other towns, doing closings in other towns, and I know it was an issue in other towns, not specifically Woburn, but we can find out easy enough. Because there's enough buzz that we know a little about it.
I remember, I actually think the mayor wrote a letter on this, because we were trying to get a waiver, as you said, Tina, and the postmaster at the time was Douglas Hazelton. He, the whole idea was cost savings and all that, but, it's, I don't know, because that was the only one, and we haven't done one since, and I'm gonna bet the rules still exist.
But I wonder, to Tina through the chair, whether that was dependent on the number of houses in the subdivision. Last time, we say that was Dragon Court?
It was, and there was 10 lots there. I think a total of 20 units, but 10 house lots. I don't remember what their threshold was. We haven't come up with it recently because the subdivisions we've done the last 3 or 4 years have all been single lots at the end of
Right.
existing roads, so sort of a community mailbox never entered in. But this would be the first one, so it's worth going back and looking at the notes, making sure that we make the proper notifications
Yep.
and get you whatever contact info we've got.
Absolutely.
Good catch, Mike. Thank you.
All right, Mike, are you set?
yeah, I mean, I haven't technically looked at this and, not.
Well, I don't want to cut you off, because you might have
No,
another
I'm
great
good,
idea.
good, good.
Okay, all right. Are there questions, follow-up questions?
Yes, I'd like to hear a little bit more about the water looping, and why that's better with the dead end and a hydrant, and what's been done to date between yourselves and the DPW superintendent
Yep.
to resolve it.
I'm going to punt this to Mr. Russell because he has a little bit more knowledge than I do.
Good evening, Fred Russell, project engineer. If you can go to the existing conditions. So, Mr. Callahan, we did some test pits out there back in the winter, and there's test pit 4, which is right behind the existing garage, and we hit ledge about 4 feet down, which is noted on the plan here. And then, just at a whim, I went over towards Pool Street to see what was over there. And again, we hit ledge about 4 feet down. I didn't know it. I just kind of dug it quick. So in order to loop the water main as directed by the Director of Public Works, it's about more than 400 feet of water main that has to be added. And it would basically go along the backs of the properties on Pool Street. We would have to blast. Water mains need to be 5 feet deep. And you'd have to blast below that in order to get some bedding material under the pipe. So you'd have to probably blast on 6 to 6.5 feet along the entire trench. And then as you take head, I guess it would be east towards, south towards Pool Street to loop, you would be blasting adjacent to that existing trunk sewer main, which to me would be very complicated. You also got the brook there. We would probably need to go back to the Conservation Commission because we'd be within their jurisdiction, even closer to the brook. So the problems that arose based on looping the water main between blasting, the impact to the neighbors, the impact potentially to the existing main sewer line, and the fact that it was over 400 feet of water main, which again would be a burden to this development, we thought it best not to pursue it, and essentially dead end the water main, which currently the water main now does not even have a hydrant at the end of it. It's basically an 8-inch water main that just dead ends. So there's no way of flushing it. There's no way of circulating the water. There's no fire protection. We're extending it up with a hydrant, so we'll be able to flush it and provide fire service. I did have a chance to speak with the engineering department, which understood my argument there. I didn't have a chance to speak to the DPW superintendent in detail with it. So
in regards to that, on test pit 4, if I'm reading it correctly, you're telling me between 19 and 49 inches in medium sand with cobbles and a refusal. And the way it's written, I assume you're 49 inches below surface is your refusal.
correct. That's
Correct,
four.
and
It's about
there's
4
only
feet.
There's only the 4 test pits that are in the existing lot owned by the Galantes, correct?
Right. Correct. Yeah.
Are any other test pits been done on the property in the area where you'd have to loop the water, or in the sewer area that you are looking for relief from the city for?
As I suggested, I did dig a 5th test pit right behind where that, I don't know if you can see the shed on David Schwimmer, is it there? I did,
Can you just tell me what lot it is?
it's,
David Schaffner? This is lot 3.
no, see right here, right behind that shed.
Right by the shed there, Jim.
It's, if you look at the cursor here,
Yeah.
there's a small shed right here.
Yeah, so right behind there, I just dug a quick test pit, and I basically got the same thing. There was refusal about 4 feet down. I didn't note it because I wasn't really planning to do anything over there as far as, these were basically dug for infiltration purposes for the drainage systems. But I said, oh, while I'm here, let me just check and see what the ledge, and we hit ledge about 4 feet there.
Thank you.
Jim, are you set?
Yes, I am, thank you.
Okay. Are there other questions at this point? All right, Tina.
So if you don't mind, I'm gonna run the PowerPoint. You've got a couple slides.
Up on the screen.
Where did my cursor? There. So I came up with a few more waivers than Jim has, but some of them are related to sidewalks, which accounts for at least a few of them. Many of these, I think, have already been mentioned. The roadway right-of-way width, cul-de-sac right-of-way diameter, pavement width, cul-de-sac pavement diameter. I had it at 84 feet proposed, but I think you said 80, Jim. Did you misspeak?
I might have said, yeah, I might have misspoke.
I think it's
It is
84.
84, you're right. Yep. It's less than 80, yeah, I believe you're correct. Yep.
Water main not being looped, that's obviously a question. And the drain line material, which is different than what's typically required, which Jim had also mentioned. Oops, sorry. A couple more. There's a proposal to use recycled pavement rather than the typical select gravel subbase. I don't know that it was even caught in any of the memos, but this is different, and the suggestion from engineering was that the DPW department be asked to weigh in on that particular comment. I have not asked him yet, but I would be hopeful that the applicant would. As we mentioned earlier, the sidewalk is on one side where typically you require two. Bituminous versus concrete. There's the discussion about the grass strip and sidewalk, typical layout requirement. What they're proposing is different from that. And then perhaps on the most minor note, the slope of the pavement and the road itself is supposed to be at a pitch of 3/8 of an inch, and it's at 1/4. I'll share with you all these slides.
I appreciate that, thank you.
You won't have to struggle.
Thanks.
So then I guess there's another category of things I wanted to mention. The different letters back and forth. There's a couple of departments that are recommending that others take a specific look at something. DPW on the cross-country sewer connection. They may have already done that, but I didn't see specifically a note in their letter. We just need to be clarified. I'm sure they reviewed it, but want to make sure what their comments are. The fire department, I did speak with them this afternoon. They had difficulty and misread the plan a little bit. They saw the new hydrant location that you were proposing. I don't think there's an issue there, but one of the departments had asked for them to be vigilant of the line valve connection and just see if they have any issues. That I didn't ask, so that part would be a hanging matter to double check with the fire department. I don't think there's any issue with the street light, but the suggestion was that the police department confirm that. It's exactly where you typically require them, at the end of the cul-de-sac. I guess I have a repetitive there when I say DPW review of that recycled pavement. That would be an additional, that's not an extra waiver, that's already covered. And then DPW in their letter said they were deferring the analysis of the adequacy of the underground infiltration system to either the Concom's peer reviewer and/or to our engineering department. I don't know if the Concom is going to have a peer reviewer, but I did see Jay Corey later on this afternoon, and he said that although he was limited and couldn't do it this week, he thought his department could do that analysis, but it has not yet been completed. And then there's a third category of issues that I think we need to talk about. There are a bunch of these, and this is kind of a summary of kind of where we all are. Those infiltration systems are going to be on private property. The roadway is proposed, I would imagine, to be a public road. So one of the comments is that we need to get those infiltration systems. We have to figure out how they're going to be maintained. Typically, there's a homeowners association created, but there's been no discussion or mention of that yet. So it's something that needs to be vetted and figured out. And to some extent, they also apparently encroach, at least in one case, into what would be the public right-of-way. And DPW is recommending that be relocated so that it's wholly on private property, because it will be maintained presumably by the private property owners. There's a small parcel of land kind of created because of the geometrics of the road. And that there's a suggestion or a note that it be combined with the abutting parcel, which makes a lot of sense. But the suggestion is that we get documentation or acknowledgement from that owner that they'd be willing to accept that little sliver, so that, I learned a new term, it doesn't become a hiatus strip. We used to call them orphan strips, but they're hiatus strips. 2 street trees have to be planted for each lot. You have to have specific caliper. You have to show the locations on the plan. Right now, they're not shown on the plan, so that is a requirement. The parcel of land B, as we've talked about, is to be discussed in many ways, at least in part. I think it's something that I would want to check with both the mayor and the city solicitor as to what their advice or preference might be on those. There are certainly some benefits to leaving it in private ownership. It stays on the tax rolls. The responsibility for maintenance and any liability would stay with somebody other than the city of Woburn, which may militate toward an easement versus ownership of the parcel. But I think I certainly need to figure out with the mayor and Ellen whether there's a preference or a strong suggestion on that point. I don't know how the board feels, if you have a preference, but I'll find out from management what we feel. Fire flow tests have not been done apparently, and that was brought up, and they are not yet have been submitted. It's something that is mentioned in the rules and regs, really needs to be done. Probably one of the, if there's anything that's time consuming or sensitive, that might be it on this. Talked about the loop. If it happens, they'd actually have to widen the easement. There's a minimum distance requirement between water and sewer, so they'd have to rejigger the easement and broaden it. I don't know to what width, but certainly more than the current 20. And again, the question of the drainage system having been evaluated has not yet been but will need to be. And then the last ones are these. The suggestion was that the engineer investigate the sewer lines, just make sure that they're adequate, and confirm that the last two on Winter are in fact hooked into the municipal system. I don't know why there's a question or if there is one, but the suggestion is just to confirm it now so that if there isn't, you know that you've got to redesign a little bit of your sewer to accommodate that. There's the mention about the encroachment into the right-of-way that has to be relocated. Concom noted the name Berry Brook is on the plan. Apparently the administrator asked where it came from, wasn't clear, so they've suggested either find the official source or just perhaps remove the name and call it Brook. And then Hall's Brook is labeled on the map, and she thinks it's actually on the opposite side of Main Street. So if that's the case, that name has to be fixed. And then lastly is the issue of the naming of the road. There's two things. One is if you have a different name, it could conceivably create that confusion on the part of people not familiar with the neighborhood. You've got to find Oliver Galante Way, which is at the end of Winter Road. One of two pieces is a little difficult. More maybe importantly or practically, there's a zoning ordinance that says that all new roads have to be named after someone who was killed in action. And to our knowledge, his name does not appear on that list. So if you wanted to name it Oliver C. Galante Way, you'd actually need a variance. So those were the issues and kind of the outstanding things as I kind of see it here. And so it might be appropriate to talk about what my recommendation would be. A lot of these are going to be in the hands of Attorney Giuliano and the engineer and the applicant to solve. A couple, as I've mentioned, are probably staff's. So I would recommend that the hearing not be closed this evening and that you continue it. And the question would be till when? And you've got two meetings coming up in the short term, June 13th and June 27th. And my thought is, given the nature of some of these and knowing how things go, that it might be more appropriate to continue the hearing to June 27th, which would give a solid 4 or 5 weeks to get all of these things put together. Staff will also presume to come to the next meeting with at least a draft letter for you to consider whether it's an approval or a denial, depending on how the conversation goes. A lot of these hopefully will be solved and will be not issues at the time. So that's kind of staff's recommendation. Happy to answer any questions.
Excellent, thank you. All right, are there any questions for Tina on her recommendation or the slides she presented to us? Bob?
So Tina, you are recommending that the applicant apply for these waivers?
Well, what I'm saying is I would really like the applicant to review my list, confirm or not that I'm accurate. It may also be that I've missed something that in a more thorough review they would add. And then they need to decide, you've heard from at least one member tonight, how he feels about the waiver on the bituminous sidewalk. So let's suppose they decide, you know what, of all the things we're asking for, let's not ask for that waiver. Then what they should do is provide us with a final formal list of waivers that they are requesting. I'm not sure, some may change, but we don't have that formal list yet, and we should. It should come from them, probably from the design engineer who says, as I drew the plan, these are the waivers it would need. So I'd ask for that to be something that would also be submitted to us in advance of the next meeting so that you've got it and know what those waivers are.
Along those lines, if the applicant does apply the waivers, we will have the appropriate departments review the waivers, like the DPW, whatever it is they're asking for, and give us a report on what they think about them.
Well, some of them have, like on the issue of the sidewalks, I think you will find commentary in both engineering and DPW talking about those waivers. I remember, for instance, on the width of the pavement of the street, they're proposing 24, where 26 is typically required for a minor road. And the engineering department and the planning department were supportive of the 24 feet. It'll be uniform, which is more than the existing portion is now. It's a common width that the board has approved in other subdivisions for two-way traffic. And it also helps a little bit with the drainage calculations, you might say, less pavement. DPW thought that they should, for what it was worth, their recommendation was that you require the 26. So departments have weighed in on a number of these waiver requests. What I would do if we got a revised waiver list is I would forward that waiver list out to everybody to make sure that they understood the full breadth, and then they would have that opportunity to make an additional comment if they had any.
Because as of this moment, there is no waiver list.
There's only one waiver was requested for the sidewalks. They did ask for that generally, meaning sidewalk on the side.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, there was, if I'm through the chair, there was some obvious ones we knew of, but I think the dialogue that we had tonight, which is very important, will allow us to put a definitive waiver list together for the board. And then obviously with the comments, we can decide which ones are priority, which ones we may strike. I think we had about, call it 2/3 of the waivers we mentioned tonight that we knew of. Obviously, there's always additional ones, so now we can go back, see what, based on the comments, see what we want to do, if we want to actually still request a waiver for those specific items, and then put a complete list together once we get some more comments back from the department heads as well, too. So there's a couple of things. But yeah, we fully intended on coming up with a complete list of waivers before we closed, obviously, so.
And I kind of, just on that, a last note on that for the waiver list, I had originally thought that maybe we could get it as late as maybe the 20th, which would be a week before the meeting if you continue it to the 27th. But if you do continue to the 27th, I think I'd like to have that waiver list by the 13th, because that will give then 2 solid weeks for us to send to the departments, get comments back, and if there are questions or issues, there'll still be a little time to try to solve that. So that would be my recommendation, that a formal list of waivers be submitted by June 13th, if you continue to the 27th.
All right, does anyone have any questions for Tina? So I see that there is some backing and forthing and some dialogue amongst the departments on various areas in this plan, and that various departments and department heads might have various positions on things, which makes it frankly a little more difficult for us as a planning board to have the ability to choose between differing recommendations of the professionals that advise us. Is there a potential for having everyone meeting on this? If after the waiver list comes in and folks get the new waiver list and then have comments or comments on someone else's comments, or, I mean, this seems a little bit messy. So I'm just wondering if it makes sense, given the breadth of the comments, that maybe staff might suggest to the various city hall departments that it might make sense to all sit down, because it's less than ideal to have one department say one thing and another department say another, and not have us have the ability to question, well, why are why should we do X rather than Y, since none of us are engineers, right? So if that could be hashed out before it comes back, that would be very useful to us so that we could make appropriate decisions for the community. I see some nodding of the heads, so I think generally I might be on firm ground to suggest that it would be awesome if, when the new waiver list comes in, as early as possible, Tina is excellent at circulating it and then getting everyone to look at it in the context of the specific things that department heads are experts in, and then in regards to the whole, and maybe having a dialogue if there's disagreement.
I'd recommend that, and I assume you'd be willing to both join, like we'd have a Zoom meeting. It makes it very easy to get all departments together.
Yeah.
It's a great suggestion. Maybe some of the conflicts can be resolved, but we'd have all parties at that.
Yeah, Madam Chair, so I was going to suggest, we were going to try to do that ourselves unilaterally, because for us too, it's, on this side of the table, it's, some of the stuff we may capitulate with, we're just trying to figure out, well, which one is, what are we capitulating to, and and it creates a little bit of confusion on our end as well. So we were going to try to continue those conversations, but I don't think a Zoom would be a bad idea either. So we're just
Yeah.
trying, a lot of the stuff that we presented, we're trying to get answers as to how we can move forward as well, because I understand your position as well, so.
Right,
Yeah.
and there are certainly, members that have, sort of acknowledged pet peeves, like Mr. Ventresca was very open, and I am completely on board with Mike's comment, living on a road with bituminous sidewalks myself, how much I dislike that. And there are certain things that almost unilaterally as a board, we've asked applicants to hew to the subdivision rules over the last several years. And for example, concrete sidewalks, I think, is one of them. I can't remember the last time the board did a bituminous waiver on that issue. Now, grass strips, on the other hand, we may be willing, to work on that issue because there's issues with the things we require, right, in our rules that, we can take a look at. So there's issues that, you're unlikely to get a waiver just because members have feelings about it, and then got other issues that we're more than willing to discuss.
Absolutely.
And that's when it comes back to us after the departments and after the experts have sort of come to some conclusions or not, and then we can evaluate whatever comes out. So,
One last thing I should hasten to add. If the board were to agree that a continuance to June 27th is appropriate, we would need a short extension of time for board action from the proponents. The deadline right now is June 23rd, so I would recommend that we get a continuance to June 30th, which would allow us to not only meet the June 27th date, but a few days after that to file a letter if we can make a decision that night. I do have a draft handwritten extension prepared, and Attorney Giuliano's already told me he'd be more than willing to sign it.
oh, excellent, thank you.
Yeah,
That would be
absolutely.
very
I was going to
helpful.
say, we have a template too at the office, but yours is fine. Yep.
Great, yeah, that would be super helpful, just so we have enough time to get
Absolutely.
everybody on board, because best case scenario, right? You come back on June 27th and
Want a
all the
decision,
ducks
right,
are
correct.
lined up, and everyone's input has been considered, and we don't have very much to do, other than
Should ask me, I would've
hear
had
what
it.
our experts have to say. That would be, a good world.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Okay. All right, so our public hearing is still open. There has been a recommendation by the planning board director to continue the public hearing until the 27th of June at 7 PM. We would have to decide whether it is a in-person meeting or a virtual meeting, and given the subject matter, an in-person meeting seems to make the most sense. But obviously, we can hear from the board as to preferences. Yes.
Just to be clear, my recommendation would be to first or accept the extension of time for board action to June 30th, and then continue the public hearing to 7 PM on June 27th.
So moved.
Motion by Carolyn to accept the planning board director's recommendation. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jim. Any discussion on the motion?
Discussion?
Certainly, Mike.
I think it was brought up to either have it via Zoom or in person. Right. I think we should have it in person because it's a public hearing.
Okay, so we can add that to Carolyn's motion to have the 7 PM meeting be at City Hall?
Yes.
Okay, beautiful. And that's fine for the second, Jim? Okay. Any further discussion on the motion that's on the table? All right, a motion has been made and seconded. I would ask for a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in favor, none opposed. So we will look forward to seeing you, Attorney Giuliano, at 7 PM here on the 27th of June.
Sounds good.
And with regard to getting everything in by the 13th, do you think that's going to work out?
Yes, yeah, I think we can make that happen, for sure. Yep.
Excellent.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you very
Madam
much.
Chairwoman, thank you, everyone.
See you on the 27th.
Yes.
All right. I will wait, Tina, for you to come back, because the next thing on the agenda is Planning Board Director update.
Very good. So it's a brief update, really, consisting of just a little bit of a glimpse forward into what your next couple of meetings will include. We have just continued the public hearing to June 27th, but we also have a meeting right now that is scheduled for June 13th. At the moment, I see no business for the board for the June 13th meeting. An A&R might come in, but I know of none that will be, and we have no other pending business. So I might recommend that you consider canceling the June 13th meeting, knowing that we'll be meeting in person on the 27th for the public hearing.
Would we need a formal motion for that, or we just sort of informally decide not to hold the meeting? How would that go?
Well, if you want to, I think the last time, I don't know that we took a formal vote. Karen, do you recall whether we took a vote to cancel? I don't think we did. So if there's a consensus that we not hold a meeting for that, we will change the postings at the city clerk's office to note that that the meeting will be canceled, and we'll make sure the website reflects that.
Okay, well, I don't see a rush to have a June 13th meeting with no business, so I'm going to declare a consensus that would be a good idea. So we will not meet on June 13th at all, and the next time we will see each other is on June 27th.
And then one last thing with respect to that June 27th meeting, there are two subdivisions for which the completion dates expire at the very end of June on June 30th. My personal practice has typically been to not call in applicants until after the expiration date, so that if you chose theoretically to seize the bond, you could take that vote because the completion date had expired. But I also know that in practice here, we have been a little more proactive, and on occasion called in developers before the expiration to get the update from them and to consider extending it before it expires. So I'd like to get the board's thoughts on whether or not you want me to invite these two subdivision developers in for the June 27th meeting early, or whether you want me to hold off and invite them to your next regularly scheduled meeting, which will likely be September.
All right. What is the will of the board?
September.
Bob
September?
says September. Anyone else have other thoughts?
September.
I see another September.
All right. Well,
Okay, that's my answer.
I'm hearing wafting of September, so we will deal with it in September.
Thank you.
And if in the meantime, they proactively say, hey, my subdivision is expiring, can I be on your meeting agenda? Well, we are always willing to accommodate requests. All right. All right, Tina, was that
That was the end of
update?
my report.
Okay, so then next on the agenda is approval of minutes of the May 9th, 2023 meeting. So I cannot vote, and who else cannot?
Mr. Doherty,
Mr. Doherty. All right, so you and I, Bob, will sit silent while our colleagues make this happen. There have been minutes. Are there any corrections to the draft minutes? Comments on the draft minutes? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Dave. Is there a second?
Second?
Second by Mike. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I call for a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in favor, 2 abstentions. That motion carries. Are there any other business matters that may legally come before the board not known at the time of posting, Tina?
not from staff.
All right. In that case, there is only one more motion to be made. Would someone like to make it?
Make a motion to adjourn the May 23rd planning board meeting at approximately 7:59.
All right. Motion by Bob. Is there a second? Second by Dave. Any discussion?
For discussion, he said approximately?
Through the chair.
Yes.
Because my phone says 7:59, yours might say 7, it might say 8, right? Somebody's could say 7:58, so that's why I said approximately 7:59.
All right. Approximately 7:59. That's the motion. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please raise your hands. That would be 7 in favor, none opposed. The meeting stands adjourned.